Picture an elite team of athletes poised to embark on a new season filled with promise and determination, only to have their lives taken in a split second. The Lokomotiv Yaroslavl plane crash on September 7th, 2011 not only obliterated a squad of distinguished athletes and coaches, but it also left an indelible scar on the heart of the sporting world. The aircraft that was carrying the hopes and ambitions of the prestigious Lokomotiv Yaroslavl ice hockey team failed to clear the runway, striking an antenna mast before descending into chaos on the banks of the Volga River. As investigations revealed a grim tapestry of human error and regulatory failures, the memory of the fallen team continues to echo through the halls of international hockey, a poignant reminder of both their athletic greatness as well as the fragility of life. Let's start with a bit of the background on the team. Lokomotiv Yaroslavl. The history of the Lokomotiv Yaroslavl ice hockey team is marked by periods of transformation and notable success within Russian hockey leagues. Established under the ownership of the national railroad operator Russian Railways, which led to the club's distinctive name, Lokomotiv Yaroslavl transitioned from moderate achievements during the Soviet era to becoming a consistent contender in the post-Soviet Russian Super League, or RSL. The team's ascent began with its promotion to the first league of Class A for the 1983-84 season, when it was still known as Torpedo Yaroslavl, achieving its first RSL championship in 1997. Further solidifying its prominence, Lokomotiv clinched consecutive league championships in 2002 and 2003, following their move to Arena 2000. Despite not replicating this level of triumph subsequently, the club remained competitive both in the RSL and later after joining the Continental Hockey League, or KHL, in 2008. In 2010 and 2011, the team made it to their conference championships, highlighting their consistent successes at the elite level of Russian hockey. And with some recent additions to the team, both in terms of players and coaching, Lokomotiv Yaroslavl was one of the favorites in the KHL for the upcoming season, which was set to begin for them with a road game in Minsk, Belarus in September 2011. The Passengers. Given that it was a successful team in one of the most elite ice hockey leagues of the world, it's no surprise that Lokomotiv Yaroslavl had a roster full of well-known and successful players. In addition to former National Hockey League or NHL players such as Pavel Demitra, Joseph Vasicek, and Karl Rakunek, the new season was set to mark the debut of Ruslan Salei, who had also previously played in the NHL. The new season would also be the first at Lokomotiv Yaroslavl for two new coaches, Brad McCrimmon and Igor Korolev, both of whom had long and successful playing careers in the NHL before turning to coaching. All told, on the morning of September 7th, 2011, there were 8 crew members as well as 37 passengers on board the Yakovlev Yak 42 charter flight operated by Yak Service, the vast majority of whom were the players and team staff of Lokomotiv Yaroslavl, and little did any of them know it was the last flight they'd ever take. The crash. The weather at Tunoshna Airport was favorable that day, featuring light winds, clear visibility, and a temperature of around 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. The Yak 42, registered as RA 42434, entered the runway at taxiway 5, and this taxiway ran for about 3,000 meters or nearly 10,000 feet, allowing plenty of room for the takeoff run. After receiving clearance for that takeoff, the aircraft accelerated to an estimated 120 knots but failed to become airborne. The plane overran the runway by about 400 meters or 1,300 feet before finally lifting off. Subsequently, the left wing struck an antenna mast situated about 450 meters or 1,500 feet from the runway's end, without climbing more than just about 6 meters or 20 feet off the ground. The impact with the mast caused the aircraft to veer left and crash on the riverbank of the Tunoshonka River, just short of where it met the large Volga River. This collision resulted in the loss of the tail assembly, while the front portion of the jet disintegrated. The tail section came to rest in the water with the remainder of the fuselage on dry land. The wreckage was located just about 2 kilometers or 1.2 miles from the runway's end. Witnesses described the aircraft as bursting into flames after striking the mast. Another witness mentioned the engines going silent moments before the crash. Additional reports indicated that the aircraft collided with trees before crashing. A security surveillance camera on the mast actually captured the Yak-42 approaching at high speed, running off the runway mere meters above the ground, with the nose pulling up just before impacting the mast. It's a wild video. It's available online. You can check it out at your discretion. Debris was discovered just beyond the mast site, continuing on to the crash location, and at no point did the crew report any technical problems to air traffic control. In the end, all but one of the people on board were killed, either immediately in the crash or thereafter in the hospital. This included every single player from the Lokomotiv Yaroslavl main roster, as well as 4 players from their junior team who were also on board. It also included the team's 3 primary coaches, though goaltending coach Jorma Valtonen was not on the aircraft as he stayed behind to work with the junior team. How's that for a lucky break? The lone survivor of the crash was the flight's mechanic, Alexander Sizov, who had been traveling in the passenger cabin. After such a horrific disaster involving such a prominent group of people, you can bet many folks around the world were looking for answers about what happened. But the investigation that followed, unfortunately, did little to ease the grief of family, friends, and fans. The investigation. The investigation into the Lokomotiv Yaroslavl plane crash identified several contributing factors. Key findings included poor training of the flight crew, incorrect calculation of takeoff speed, and inadvertent application of wheel braking by one of the pilots due to improper foot placement. Additionally, it was revealed that the pilot had used falsified documents to obtain permission to fly, and both crew members lacked adequate training for operating the Yak-42 aircraft that they were piloting that day. This combination of deficiencies led to the aircraft overrunning the runway, striking the antenna mast, catching fire, and ultimately crashing, resulting in the horrendous loss of life. The aftermath. Following the disaster, city officials in Yaroslavl announced a 3-day period of mourning. On September 10th, memorial services for the players were held in their home countries, while the largest services were held in Arena 2000, the home arena of the team itself, with thousands of mourners as well as Russian Prime Minister Vladimir Putin in attendance. Local officials determined the crowd number both inside and outside the arena to be roughly 100,000 people. Various NHL teams for whom some of the deceased players had previously played held memorials or moments of silence, as well as wore commemorative patches on their uniforms in honor of their fallen teammates. The Slovak Ice Hockey Federation announced that the jersey number 38 would be retired from the national team in memory of Pavel Demitra, who had recently retired from their national team in just May of that year. The German Ice Hockey Federation announced similar plans for Robert Dietrich's number 20, as did the Latvian Ice Hockey Federation for the number 7 jersey of Karlis Skrastins. Following the tragedy, Lokomotiv chose to cancel their participation in the 2011-2012 KHL season, though the team did return the following season following a special player draft. Off the ice, Russian President Dmitry Medvedev ordered the grounding of all airlines which were, quote, not adequately able to ensure passenger safety, end quote. Russian aviation authorities suspended all flights with the Yak-42 pending checks of other existing aircraft of the same type. And on September 21st, 2011, just 2 weeks after the crash, Yak Service had its operating license revoked after an audit of flight operations of the airline. Vadim Timofeyev, deputy head of the airline, was later charged with breaching air safety rules. He pled not guilty, blaming the crash on poorly placed cargo, if you can believe it. But he was found guilty on September 23, 2015, for violating Part 3 of Article 263 of the Russian Criminal Code, which covered the safe operation of aircraft, resulting in the manslaughter of more than 2 people. Yeah, a lot more than 2 people. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, he was amnestied without serving the full term. The legacy. The tragic disaster involving the Lokomotiv Yaroslavl ice hockey team remains one of the most devastating events in aviation and sports history. The intricate web of factors leading to the disaster, ranging from inadequate pilot training, improper takeoff procedures, and falsified documentation, points to a harrowing picture of negligence and systemic failure. The catastrophic chain of events culminated in a heartbreaking loss, not just for the families and fans of those aboard, but also for the sport of ice hockey itself, which was robbed of exceptional talent and unknown future potential. Thanks for watching today, everyone. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If there are any other sports tragedies you'd like to see me cover on the channel, feel free to leave it below and I can work on adding it to this ongoing series of sports tragedies. Talk again soon, friends, and take care of one another.